You were serious. Yeah.
Okay. Now, if you listened to the lecture yesterday carefully, which you may or may not, the first serious clash between North and South over the issue of slavery came from what? Do you remember? Well, we're talking about not Mexican War stuff. No. Think even before that. Because when was this Mexican War? Wasn't it in the 1840s, 30s, what? Close. What was the first thing I said in the lecture yesterday, that what happened for the first time west of the Mississippi? To what? Explain that. What significant thing happened that I stated right off the bat in the lecture yesterday? Missouri became the first state in the Union west of the Mississippi. Well, the first serious clash between North and South came over the issue of slavery in that state. When that state was admitted in 1820, it caused some issues, and we got to kind of back up to set the stage. I said that Missouri was the first state to be admitted west of the Mississippi. Prior to that, in 1819, Alabama was admitted into the Union as a state, and when they admitted Alabama into the Union as a state, we had 11 free states and 11 slave states. That was in 1819. Prior to Missouri coming in, Alabama had just been admitted to the Union, and when they admitted Alabama into the Union, the United States composed of 11 free states and 11 slave states. So there were 22 states that made up the United States of America in 1819. 11 free, 11 slave. Now, with Alabama's admission, the North and South each had 22 votes in the United States Senate, which tells you that each state had how many senators? 2, okay? So the votes are even. So that's what everybody's concerned about in this North-South slave, non-slave balance, is how many votes they have in Congress. Okay? Right now there's 22 free state votes and 22 slave state votes. Are they going to maybe vote not the same on things? So they want to keep that even. Well, with Missouri asking to be admitted into the Union, they're going to want to come in as a slave state. So the balance of power in the Senate would then be in favor of the South, 24 to 22. And that's why this issue of slavery comes up for the first time. Nobody really cared when it was even, at 11 states each and 22 votes each. But once Missouri wanted to come in 1820, that was going to upset the apple cart and give the South 2 more votes or 1 more state more than the North. And it became controversial. Now, on February 13th of 1819, a congressman by the name of James Tallmadge from New York offered an amendment to Missouri's application to become part of the Union. He's looking for a what? C word. Compromise. Because he knows this is going to be an issue. So on February 13th of 1819, Congressman James Talmage of New York offered an amendment to Missouri's application to become part of the Union. If you want your state to become part of the Union, you've got to fill out an application to do so. And Tallmadge came up with an amendment to that application that he thought might help this issue between slave and free states. Because no matter which state comes in next, either free or slave, what's it going to do? Upset the balance, okay? Well, here was the proposal that Tallmadge gave, which was known in history as the Tallmadge Amendment. He amended Missouri's application to say that if they were admitted, there would be an outline of further introductions of slaves into Missouri, which means what? It'd come in as a slave state, but what? No more slaves come into the state. So his amendment proposed, number 1, to outlaw the further introduction of slaves into Missouri. The second part of the amendment stated that all children born into slavery in Missouri would be free on their 25th birthday. So this was the amendment that James Tallmadge put together to try to compromise so it wasn't so much of a controversy to get Missouri into the Union. He said, okay, we'll let Missouri into the Union as a slave state. However, we're going to outlaw any further introduction of slaves into the state. In other words, only the slaves that are there now can stay there. We're not going to bring any more in. Secondly, any slave that would be born in Missouri would be free on their 25th birthday. That was the amendment that he put out. Does that make sense? Do you understand it? Now, this has got to be passed by what? Which branches? Both, House and the Senate. So he sends in this amendment to Missouri's application, and the House of Representatives, which he is a member of, passes the Tallmadge Amendment. However, who doesn't pass it? Senate. So it passes through the House, doesn't pass through the Senate. So what do we need to do to break this deadlock? We need to further, C word, compromise. So what happens is these compromises or these concessions among members of Senate so they could get them to vote for the amendment became known in history as the Missouri Compromise. Have you ever heard of that? So the Missouri Compromise is a compromise between senators in the United States Senate so that they will pass this amendment that James Tallmadge put through so that Missouri can be admitted into the Union as a slave state, with the caveat that there will be no more introduction of slaves into Missouri, and that any child born into slavery in Missouri would be free on their 25th birthday. That was the amendment, and because of the Missouri Compromise, the Senate got together and passed the amendment.
What was this?
What's that?
What did they change?
Well, I'm going to tell you. Yeah, good question. Now, luckily, what helped this compromise is Maine also had applied for admission into the Union. And so the Senate agreed to this amendment, and they agreed to combine the admission of Maine and Missouri into the Union at the same time. Now, this is pretty easy for you to figure out. What's the compromise? What's the Missouri Compromise that Hannah asked about? So let's talk about it. So Maine is going to be admitted as a free state. Missouri is going to be admitted as a slave state. Balance is the same. But another thing that's very important, I want you to underline this, it was part of the Missouri Compromise. And I want you to write this down and underline it, because we'll come back to it. The third part of that compromise, other than Maine coming in as a free state and Missouri coming in as a slave state, is that slavery is going to be prohibited in the Louisiana Purchase north of latitude 3630. Remember these latitude and longitude lines that go through here? Remember those? Here's 36 right here. So pay attention. So the Louisiana Purchase, remember that big area we purchased? So slavery is going to be prohibited where on this line? North. No slaves here. Now that's going to become an issue when we get into Missouri a little bit later. So the compromise is this. Maine comes in as a free state. Missouri comes in as a slave state. And all lands north of the 36th parallel are prohibited from having slavery. Make sense in your mind? Okay? So basically, if you want to look at your notes, anything south of the state of Missouri can be slave. Anything north of the bottom border of Missouri is going to be free. Okay? That became known in history as the Missouri Compromise. Now, think about Southern members of Congress. Are they going to accept that compromise? Sure they are, because think about this. What is most important agriculturally to the South right now? Somebody said it. C word. Cotton. Is there any cotton going to be any cotton going to be grown north of the 36th parallel? No. So they didn't have any problem with it because their cotton industry is in the south of the 36th parallel. And what do they want? Slaves. Okay? Now this really accomplishes some great things. It keeps the balance of free states and slave states even in the Senate. How many we got now? 24 votes, 12 and 12. Well, now we'll get into some more admissions. Think about this. What other state, somebody mentioned, wants to come in? And they came in 1844. You just said it here. And I said, no, not yet. Texas. They came in 1844. What are they going to come in as? Slave. Then Florida came in 1845. What'd they come in as? Slave. So all of a sudden now the balance in 1845 is 2 states or 4 votes in favor of what? South.
When did Florida become state?
Florida, 1845. So this is going to be a give and take. So I'll repeat that. The admission of Texas into the Union in 1844 and then Florida in 1845 made the balance between North and South in the Senate favor the South by 4 votes or 2 states. However, that was balanced in 1846 and in 1848 when Iowa and Wisconsin came into the Union, both as free states. So Texas comes in 1844, slave state. Florida, 1845, slave state. Gives the South 2-state advantage, 4-vote advantage in the Senate. But in 1846, Iowa comes in, and in 1848, Wisconsin comes in. And now we've got a balance of even again. Now, that'll take us to our next subtopic, something that has to be dealt with, along with the slavery issue, is what? Land that we acquired from... Who was the president that was accused of going to war for land? President Polk, right? And they all said, hey, he went to the Mexico, he declared war in Mexico because he wanted land. True. So now, what are we going to do with this land that we acquired from Mexico, and how is it going to be run? Slave or free? Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Now, this area of the United States that was acquired as a result of the Mexican War became known as the Southwest United States. That's what they called it. The Southwest United States was the land that we acquired from Mexico after the Mexican War. It's called the Southwest United States. And Americans had 4 different opinions on what should be done with this land. It's hard to settle 2 different opinions, isn't it, sometimes? You have 4 different opinions, 4 different factors in the United States, or politicians have 4 different opinions on what we should do with the land we acquired from Mexico. Who probably is going to have the first opinion? President Polk. This is what he thought. Number 1. President Polk and his supporters believed the issue of slavery should be settled as a result of the Missouri Compromise of 1820. President Polk and his followers believed that this issue of slavery, free or slave states or territories, should be decided by the Missouri Compromise. Which tells you what? If you were paying attention, that 3rd line. What? Say it. You're going to say it. Anything over the 36th parallel, north of it has to be free, south of it has to be... That's what President Polk's opinion was. We already got the Missouri Compromise of 1820, just follow it in all these lands that we gained from Mexico. That was his opinion. So there'd be no slavery north of latitude 3630. Well, we had a member of the House from the Democratic Party by the name of David Wilmot. David Wilmot was a congressman, Democratic congressman. Pretty powerful at the time. And he had his followers. And his opinion was he opposed slavery in any of the new lands acquired from Mexico. He thought that slavery should be prohibited in any of the new lands that we gained from the war with Mexico. He opposed slavery totally. Democratic Representative Congressman David Wilmot, along with his supporters, opposed slavery in any of the new lands acquired from Mexico. So you have two different opinions so far, right? Guess who made the third opinion will the thrill?
Was it John C. Calhoun?
John C. Calhoun. And he had his followers. And he insisted that Congress had no right to prohibit slavery anywhere in the southwestern United States. He claimed publicly that Congress had no right to prohibit slavery anywhere in the southwestern United States. So what's he an advocate for? Slavery everywhere, right?
Why,
Now, go ahead.
why did he think that?
Because he's a southerner.
Yeah. So isn't that kind of the same thing as Polk, like we would have slavery?
Well, Polk said no slavery here.
Yeah, but he
Calhoun's saying anywhere, that any of the lands that we acquired from Mexico should be able to have slaves if they want.
Yeah, I know, but like, he said there's 4 things that we should do it because of like
Right.
land we gained, but Polk and John C. Calhoun both said that we should have slavery there.
Right, but Polk's difference is slavery south of the 36th parallel, and Calhoun said everywhere. See the difference? Okay, now, here are two important senators in history. Michigan Senator Lewis Cass and Illinois Senator,
Is this the fourth
this is
one?
4, yeah? Michigan Senator Lewis Cass and Illinois Senator Stephen Douglas kind of combined together or joined forces, and they had their own opinion on it. Yep. Illinois, yeah. Lewis Cass was from Michigan, a senator from Michigan, come back in history we're going to talk about. And Stephen Douglas we'll talk about quite a bit from Illinois, very powerful Illinois. You ever heard of the Lincoln-Douglas debates? You debaters, that's where, okay. Okay, so Senators Lewis Cass of Michigan and Stephen Douglas of Illinois had their own opinion. Now this is what they said. They said that the citizens of each territory of lands that we gained from Mexico should be able to do what? Decide on their own. So if the majority of the people in the New Mexico territory want slavery, there should be slavery. If a majority of the people that inhabit the New Mexico territory want free, should be free. That's what they pushed for. So you had 4 different opinions, so make sure you know those. Polk said the issue of slavery should be settled by the Missouri Compromise of 1820. Democratic Congressman David Wilmot opposed any slavery in the lands acquired from Mexico. John C. Calhoun stated that Congress has no right to make a determination to abolish slavery in any of the lands from Mexico. And Lewis Cass and Stephen Douglas, powerful senators, argued that why don't we let the citizens of each area decide for themselves what they want. Well, that leads us to the election of 1848. And of course, the hot topic in this election is going to be the issue of slavery in the new territory that we had acquired from Mexico. So the election of 1848. Now, what are the 2 major parties, if we remember? Democrats and the Whigs. Okay, so both those major political parties, the Democrats and Whigs, really feared to take a stand on the issue during the election. Why would they not going to take a stand? Well, these political parties, do you think all Democrats were in favor of slavery or they weren't? No, we're all split up here. So both parties were a little apprehensive to discuss it much in the campaign because they thought it would tear their own political parties apart. Now, President Polk is going to run for re-election in 1848. Excuse me, he's refusing to run for re-election in 1848. My fault. He refused to run for re-election in 1848. So, which of the men we talked about just a minute ago stepped up and gained the party nomination for the Democrats? What do you think it was? of the names we just mentioned. The four opinions. Nope.
Douglas.
Nope. Lewis Cass of Michigan. So Lewis Cass of Michigan, Senator from Michigan, is going to be the Democratic nominee for president because President Polk is going to be one and done. What does that mean? One term, he had had enough, and he was done. So Lewis Cass of Michigan is going to be the Democratic Party nominee. Now this is really weird because the Whig Party didn't have anybody worth a damn that they wanted to nominate. So guess who they nominated? You might not even remember this. What? No. General Zachary Taylor from the Mexican War. Remember on your discussion, our discussion yesterday? He was one of the generals in the Mexican War. So Zachary Taylor is nominated by the Whig Party, and this guy has no political experience, no political views. Right? Now, have you ever heard of President Lewis Cass?
No.
Well, you know what happened then. Zachary Taylor wins the presidency in 1848. But wait a minute. Wait a minute. We got a new party coming in, so not so fast. You ever heard of Martin Van Buren? Yeah, Martin Van Buren's going to run in this election, believe it or not, for the Free Soil Party. So you're going to have Senator Lewis Cass of Michigan for the Democrats, General Zachary Taylor with absolutely no political experience or knowledge at all for the Whigs, and they're going to form a new party because you can tell, when does a new party get formed? When the candidates are garbage or weak. So the Free Soil Party comes in, and they nominate former President Martin Van Buren, and their campaign slogan was free soil, free speech, free labor, and free men.